Hello, on this episode of the Average Lockdown Cast, we're going to be having a look down memory lane at Warhammer 40,000 through the ages. Hello, and we're back again for another episode of the Average Lockdown Cast, episode 6 as it is. So we'll start off by introducing ourselves. I'm Sven.
I'm Ian. I'm Gary.
I'm Ben.
You can see when we're doing this over the video call, we no longer have the cues for who's going to go for next after Sven's announced it.
You'd think after 6 of these they would have worked something out, but anyway.
It's because we're always in different places. Like my screen is, I'm in a different place to where I was last time. So
you're all in the same place on my screen,
order.
which works nice. So as we're recording this, a couple of days previous to this was when Games Workshop have just had their big teaser stroke preview campaign of 9th edition of Warhammer 40,000, I should say, obviously. 9th ed. And so I think we've touched on Warhammer 40,000 a few times in previous episodes of this, like going back and many, many times over all of our videos. I think we've managed to talk about older versions of 40k in some form or other. So we figured we'd have a bit walk down through the past of our histories of Warhammer 40k, because I think we've all, I mean, we definitely have all played 40k a lot in the past. Some of us a lot more than others. So I figured we'd just basically have a go, go through the chronology of 40k and kind of, we can go back through what armies we had, what we played, where we were playing, you know, what we thought of the game at the time, and generally go from there. So, I guess obviously the logical starting point is going to be Rogue Trader era of Warhammer 40k.
So what year was Rogue Trader? Because I recall it from my first year at senior school, which was 83.
87.
87.
How could it be 87? I'm sure I was only 11, 10, 11.
Mate, psychedelics.
I must have been older.
Probably messed with your brain.
Must have been older.
It was all those years you got kept back. You were still in primary school, but you were 11.
I'll have you know, I didn't get held back. I got sent forward. They got rid of me from primary school a year early.
He's a big lad for his age. Just move him on a bit.
And the fact that,
basically, yeah.
The fact that he's having to teach other kids how to shave is a giveaway.
He's got a full beard and he's 10.
So 87. So, I mean, I remember I definitely talked about this the other week when we were talking about, you know, getting into the hobby and stuff like that. And I said, like, even before I knew what a 40k was, I had bought a Space Marine bike and sidecar with melt like gun on it from our local hobby shop, our local model shop. And I say our Lee was playing with his mates from school. They were playing Rogue Trader, and that must have been about 87. That must be 87, 88ish, around then, that they were playing that. So, as much as I collected stuff for 40k at the time, I never played a game of 40k at that stage. So I definitely had a box of the original Imperial Guardsmen, the massive head jumpsuit with a Necromundan. They were like, that was the regiment that they were like.
The 7th, the Necromundan Spiders.
Yeah, Necromundan. That was a Necromundan 7th.
Were they the ones with the cool breastplates and the...
Yeah.
It was Napoleonic. Yeah. The Imperial. I've got some on eBay. It was like Napoleonic.
They were lovely.
Like cuirass breastplates.
Yeah.
So like your officer class all looked like the Napoleonic, where all your troopers looked like they just had dungarees and overalls on from the hive with a bit of flak armour on top.
And there was really thin las guns.
Long, very long.
Yeah, long thin las guns.
Yeah.
So I remember I had a box of those. I definitely had a box of squats. Because I shared a box of squats with my mate, and one of my mates bought the Orc box, where they had the battle wagon you could get, and there was the Orc box where you got all like the tools on the sprues and stuff like that, which were really cool.
That was the one there, the box artwork, like the surround was goblin green, wasn't it?
For who? Which box?
The Orcs one. It was that horrible first, like Rogue Trader First Ed Orcs box that had the green border.
The very first one was the RTBO2 Space Orcs, and it was a pictorial one, and it was kind of like done on a brown photograph, and there was some yellow on it, and the Space Orcs logo was quite greenish.
I remember that being green.
The Eldar were in a bright yellow box, the Eldar Guardians. The Orcs might have actually, they might have had some green and reds. Now I'm thinking about it.
It was
Because
like,
RBO1, the Wombles was a blue box, wasn't it?
Well, it's Crimson Fists.
It was Crimson Fists. It was dark, that weird, that slightly kind of greyish dark blue border around the that iconic picture of the fist.
So I've got an interesting take on the first edition of 40k. Now I got Rogue Trader, I'd say probably mid to late '89. I got the rule book. Now the interesting thing was I bought my first White Dwarf in March 1987, so I saw all the build up to the 40k release at Games Day that year. And the interesting thing was, the thing that put me off it was used to have an editorial in White Dwarf, and Rick Priestley did the editorial for his own game, and actually slated the abbreviation that someone gave for it. So because it got called 40k, he referred to it as WH40k because he hated it. He says it's Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader, and he was very precious about it. And he kind of like slated an abbreviation. I was like, probably not what I want to get into. But a couple of years later, I bought it and really loved it.
Yeah, you really held out on that, didn't you?
Yeah, 2 years.
So I've just found the box artwork for the Space Orc Raiders, so I'm just going to stick that up on the screen now so that people at home can see what we're talking about. And do you know what? I'm having such flashbacks, because even the poses of the orcs, the way they held their guns, and
they're all like that.
Like they had, they were holding them essentially like you would hold an MP40. Kind of thing, and they all had like all the officers had like a proper like kind of commissar's commandant kind of cap. And
well, their guns were effectively German World War II firearms, weren't they? When you kind of look at them, they all had that style to them.
But the Space Marines, when they came out, the RTB01 set was insane. 30 models for £10. It was outrageous.
It's bananas when you look back at the price that used to be charged for things and what you got, and most of them were metals back then, of course, as well.
In the space of a year, someone would have bought a company of Space Marines, and like have it painted because it didn't cost as much as you would think. £10 was a lot in '87. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it was a lot of money. I remember it, like going to buy the first box of RTB01s, and I'm like, do I really want to spend a tenner on this? And it being a lot of money.
And now you get hold of one of them, and they're like, even in all their armour, they're like the skinny cousin of a Catachan.
With the big clown feet.
Yeah.
So.
And then there was the. Do you remember the rhinos at 3 for a tenner?
Yes.
Okay,
that was when that came out. That was revolutionary.
We are at real danger of going down. Do you remember when a 10-penny mix used to have more than 10 sweets in it?
But the interesting thing is, I don't think it's about pricing it. It's more a case of like, it's the thing that made it work.
Yeah.
You got a lot of toy soldiers for very limited investment, and it was eminently accessible, and it created accessibility, and that's what it did.
For 25 quid, you'd have 30 Marines, so 3 10-man squads. You'd put them into 3 rhinos, and you'd have a command squad and a heavy weapons team.
Yeah.
And that was 25 quid. And that, in terms of accessibility and playability, that was a game. That was more than enough to play a game with.
So, I mean,
and then they, things like the Land Raider were coming out, and Predators and stuff like that, and the Marine bikes and all that kind of stuff. And it was mental, of what you could get for the money.
And there was a lot in Rogue Trader, which was because obviously GW knew they didn't have the models to back up a lot of the stuff that they wanted to put in the game yet. There was a lot of scratch builds. So I mean, we've mentioned before about the Insignia shower gel bottle, speeder, and then there was
Men in Speed Stick.
Yeah, and there was the classic. It was an ATST legs with like a 1/48 scale Apache gunship front on it with some armor plates from something else put on it as like one of the walkers that was in there.
So I've just been on a calculate inflation for the UK thing. So your £10 in '97 today is worth £28.31.
So do you know what? That's not actually that far off.
But
what you'd get now.
Your 28 quid's getting you a 10-man squad whereas it was getting you 30 back in those days. But the exponential rate of quality is very, very different.
And actually,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
See, if you think about it as well, when you go back to the Games Workshop models, because obviously we'll come back to this as we go through the eras. Go back to the Games Workshop models of those days. They were doing, a lot of plastics early on, but not just a lot of plastics early on. Multi-pose, really customizable plastics. You had all your different weapon choices. You had, like, even just a little bit like the spare pouches and mags that you got to put on your Space Marines.
Yeah. You've got to give it a workshop. They've broke the mold literally. You know what I mean? It's so many iterations of what you can do with figures. Like even when you look at what they've done with like ZBrush and digital sculpting and how they've transformed that as well. It's the revolutionary, and you can't take that away from them. Absolutely brilliant. But back to what we said though, it was buying a lot of stuff for very limited money was amazing.
Yeah, and
I carry on.
No, I was going to say you carry on. You go.
I was just going to say because I didn't play Rogue. I mean, a lot of what you were describing was before I actually really got into the hobby. I mean, it comes back to one of our previous discussions where at that time I was kind of doing Hero Quest and Space Crusade. But I remember my first being aware of Rogue Trader was in my first White Dwarf, which was the one where they had the original Goth army list that had Draka in it, and it was just that real. It's bizarre. It's one of those memories that stuck with me, but there was never that kind of, this is a game I need to get into, because I didn't really get it as a game at that point, because it just hadn't had the same exposure. But I was just while we were talking there, I was talking about the first proper minis I owned were Rogue Trader, and they were bought in a bookshop, and it was the original box of Deathwing Terminators. I was just desperately trying to find the price of them because I don't remember them being that much. And it was that first that first reel. These are that next level up from the clipped together Space Marines from the game of the same name.
So I think, and again, it's one of those odd ones where because we weren't playing Rogue Trader, and I might be off in the timings here, but I know that back then we were playing Space Hulk, so it would have been just between Rogue Trader and Second Ed. So before we move on to Second Ed, obviously that was where the first release of Space Hulk was, if I'm right.
So the initial Space Hulk was the D&H Bass game was, I think it was 89.
So we were playing Space Hulk, which means I remember. So I think my brother had. So I had a copy of Space Hulk, which meant I had the Terminators from Space Hulk painted very badly. Like they were some of my first paint attempts at stuff like that. But then I bought that Deathwing box that you're talking about, or I had the Deathwing Terminators, and I remember.
Were they the metal ones? Do you mean?
Yeah, the metal Deathwing Terminators with the actual, they had the assault cannon with the feathers on it and things like that.
So the Second Ed version.
Yeah.
With the Second Ed ones. Okay, so that might be Second Ed because
there was a Terminator Squad box set which had a captain, a librarian, and 6 Terminators.
Yeah, so we were using those. I know we had the metal Terminators for Space Hulk when we were first playing that. With the Chaos Terminators, were they Second Ed as well, or were they First Ed? Like, were they? Because Kel had the Chaos Terminator set.
I think they were second. I don't
They
know.
might have been second because we did come back. We did come back in the late 90s or mid 90s to playing Space Hulk. So I might be getting a bit mixed up here with what we used to use, but we
you
played.
mentioned up your Combat Scape arenas there.
Yeah, I know we definitely I had definitely bought some of the metal Terminators to use in Space Hulk. Some of the extra stuff you couldn't get in, or you didn't get in the box.
So I've just found a very bad picture of them, but I don't know if they were Deathwings. They were painted red, but they weren't Blood Angels.
Deathwing and Dark Angels.
Yeah.
So there should be a bone white colour if it's the Deathwing. So interestingly, So I started working for Workshop in '93. So Rogue Trader was still the 40k game at the time, and when I joined, we were still selling it. I was gaming it quite regularly. It was a good game. It could be quite detailed. The games could go on for a long time though. Once you start playing the battle levels, if you played with like a serious-sized army which had, 70, 80 models in it that were infantry and associated tanks, walkers, guns, that kind of thing, that game went on forever. It really did. It took a long time to play. So it was a big investment playing in the hobby in those days, for time and space. But the changeover when Second Ed came out was dramatic. Like, for how workshop started to shift, it moved away from being this. It had gone from into what they term its golden age in the 80s, where it was lots of creativity, lots of crazy ideas, throwing anything out there, and that's when they started moving up the gear, going, right, we need to plan what we're releasing. So you'd get a structured release of figures with army books and codex releases, and they were very big on getting that out at the time. So that was a big departure and a big change on the rules. So moving into second edition, to move it on a little bit, second edition, so that came out in '93, was a very different game. Plastic models, 40 Gretchen, 20 Orcs, 20 Marines.
So I've just chucked a picture up there on the screen for the viewers at home of the box contents. Yeah. And I tell you what, looking at that box contents, you got a lot.
It was a heavy box. And we used to one of the little tricks we used to do is, there's a thing about ownership where you put the thing into someone's hands, they don't want to give it to you back. It's a salesman trick. So they feel like, well, this is mine. So I say, well, look at this. You just have a hold of that. So, and you then point at it and point things out, and you'd keep your hands at your side and say, oh, what do you think of that then? And they're like, oh, well, I don't want to give it back now. But the thing is, you'd hook them into it. They'd had a game, they'd have a run through, and when you felt the weight of that box, what we used to do is we used to do a little bit of a drop of it into the hands, so they'd be like, oh, there'd be a bit of a stat. Oh, Christ, that's heavy.
Well,
and it was
three books, because there was the rule book, the Codex Imperialis, and the War Gear book. You got three reference cards, or two reference cards, and a probably a build sheet or something.
A card Orc Dreadnought.
You got the card Orc Dreadnought. You got all your templates and counters, all cardstock. You got all of the actual War Gear cards and unit cards and the mission cards.
Mission cards, yeah.
And then you got an absolute metric, like ton. I was going to swear there, of cardboard Gothic ruins.
Yeah.
This was the edition of 40k that I got in the box, because this is the one where I think at this time I was transitioning from playing Space Marine, and me and my mate went to a games club that was being run in my school, in the school library after school one night, and we went along to play Epic. I think it was maybe Epic at the time, but we went along there to play that, and then there were some guys there playing 40k and the metal catachans. So this must be about 95ish maybe. And I just remember I bought this box at that point, and my mate bought the metal catachans, and I was using the Marines out of the box.
I think for me, it's an interesting point. I don't know what you think about this. I think the second edition of 40k and its subsequent codices and armies, not because of what was in those, changed the game and changed how Workshop was as a business and what it is as a hobby. I think that killed the Epic gaming, because it became much quicker to play and became much more accessible and easy to play through games. And it was larger scale, and you had more tanks in it and bigger guns. And you started going from Rogue Trader, which felt more like a bit of a, like I said, it was a skirmish really. It should have been played on a 4-foot board. It was quasi role playing, and it had too much detail for it to be a really big game. Like I said, I remember playing games that would last 8, 9, 10 hours, and that was what you call a 2,000 point game. It was enormous. You would struggle to play it. If you played 1,000 to 2,000 points of second ed, played in a few hours, and you were done. And I think that for me, I think that's what killed the Epic hobby in the future when this came along.
It was I think it was definitely the money side of things that killed everything but those main games. Fantasy Battle and 40k. Epic was never the big money spinner, and as we've talked about in the past, Games Workshop were trying to change what they were as a company in the 90s. And I think they saw the pound signs and they went after that, and that's why everything else suffered at the time, isn't it? And it's, as I say, something we've talked about, and I think that's where that decision to concentrate on those style of games really came from.
So I think second ed as well was kind of, it might just be my age at the time, but I remember having Rogue Trader and trying to fathom out. So me, one of the kids I was knocking around with out my back street, who we got into workshop stuff, and we bought Adeptus Titanicus and Space Crusade and that, and we got a copy of Rogue Trader and tried to play it, and I think it was a little bit beyond us in terms of like, I think there was, the mechanics of the game were still a little bit towards, the old school wargamey style. I think Second Ed was a bit more accessible, but there was still a lot of counting on fingers when you came, like you're going to take a shot, and it was like you had your modification tables. There was still a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
So you were doing a lot of that. Right, well, I'm going to take a shot at them. So I've got +1 for this, but -2 for that, and then I got +3 for that. But now I've got to do minus the square root of the distance between that tree and the fence, multiplied by the number of tanks, and then your dad's birthday. Think of a number. That's what you need to roll to hit, and that's what it felt like. But it wasn't as, I don't think it was as hefty a rule set as Rogue Trader was. So it definitely kind of went down that the route of, especially going on the back of the kids that had bought Space Crusade, and it, like, which were your traditional MB games rule sets and really accessible. I think it was the right thing to get those fished in, and that's what it did to me and my mates. I think because a lot of my mates who weren't into like that kind of stuff anyway, who had got a copy of Space Crusade for Christmas, joined me and started playing Second Ed around about the time it came out.
Here's one for you.
So Rogue Trader, I remember. Okay, I'll just say, yeah, Rogue Trader, the rule book, because it had that quasi roleplay element. If you looked at it, it looked, as a rule book, it looks more like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay looks now than 40k did from Second Ed onwards. And it was a bugger of a rule book to go through and actually do anything with. You're constantly cross-referencing this page to this page because you've got this type of troop, then you've got to put this weapon on it, and it does this, and you've got. It wasn't natural.
If you didn't have the compendium or the battle annual, you were knackered. So it was compendium and companion. That's what they did.
Right. If we're going to give every edition this much treatment, we're going to be here all night, or this is going to be the first part of a multi-part series. So.
Well, we're probably going to skip some editions in the middle.
I'm going to move this on to Second Ed, because that was where I...
Second to sixth is pretty easy, to be honest.
Well, that's kind of where we are now. We're in Second Ed, so carry on.
We're in Second Ed, yeah.
Because I'll drop out the conversation for a bit after Second Ed, because I didn't play for about 3 or 4 editions after that. Me neither. It was 94 when the Catachans, when that sort of period of Imperial Guard army for Second Ed coming out. So it was every month in White Dwarf they had another metal box set of Imperial Guard. And it was, you got the Valhallans, you got the Talarn, you got the Catachans, Mordian, Cadian. And when they weren't doing one of those, they were putting out the Chimera or the Lehman Russ or one of the variants. And that really, I just thought they looked great. I liked that. It wasn't big, silly, it wasn't big armoured Space Marines, it wasn't aliens, it was just, it was proper soldiers. Ridiculously muscled Rambo soldiers, but it was proper soldiers on the ground.
Yeah. The scale in 40k got absolutely annihilated when the Perrys dropped the Imperial Guard, because if anyone gets the Valhallan, who's stood firing, stood upright, and puts him, he's bigger than a Space Marine.
Yeah, you've shown me that before, actually.
He's enormous.
So the Valhallans were my first big 40k army. So I remember. Because again, they got the Lehman Russ out, they got the Chimera out, and then they brought the Valhallans. So my mate had bought the Catachans, and I was never really sold on the Catachans. So I bought Valhallans, and I went all in for them. Like, that was very much me kind of funneling every birthday and Christmas into getting something for.
But that was the great thing about the way they designed it as well, and a lot of people didn't like the way it, the Imperial Guard army at the time mimicked the Epic game for how you structured your army. I have to take this choice, which allows me so much of this choice. So it allowed you to do that. So you weren't just going to face off against a tank army, which you can now, but there you go. But you could have a Catachan squad and supported, and you could start another little platoon, which was Valhallans, and you could have a support unit, which was Cadians. You could have had one of every single box set and still created an Imperial Guard army.
So one of my
really weird but nice.
One of my favourite units of that time for the Guard, well, I think probably in total, of 40k second edition, one of my favourite units were the Rough Riders that they did.
Yeah.
The
Oh
Mongol
god,
ones.
the Mongol ones, they
I
were
can't remember
beautiful.
what was, they had an actual proper name.
Attillans.
Attillans. That was
Attilan
them.
Rough Riders, that's
The
what it
Attilan
was,
Rough
yeah.
Riders.
I wonder where they got that from.
They were one of my. I had 2 boxes of those for my Imperial Guard. I absolutely loved those models, and I think it was through the Valhallans. I remember one of the guys at the games club showed me a really easy way to paint fur. And so then when I got the Attillans, it was like, okay, because they had like the fur-lined hats, the fur-lined boots.
Yeah.
But yeah, second ed was, I think we played a lot of that. So the other week when we were talking about role play stuff, and I was saying how Sunday night we used to descend on Lee's house, and we would play 40k in the afternoon. It was second ed 40k we used to play. So I had Imperial Guard, Lee had Space Marines, and he had chosen, I think he's mentioned this as well before, the white consoles as a legion to do, which were like pure white with, and this was back in the day before anyone knew how to do shaded white, so they were literally like white spray paint and then detailing. Kel had a Chaos Army with like the original plastic corn berserkers, I think, that came out.
The monopause ones,
Yeah.
which had a plug-in gun.
Plug-in arm, yeah, gun arm, and Tracy, who we were playing with at the time, she had Eldar, and I think mullered the Eldar rules quite a bit to the point where it was. I think you could go B-Eddie as well back in the day if you took like all of the, what were they called? You know, like Jane Zarin at the
Aspect Warriors.
Aspect Warriors.
yeah,
Oh,
but,
and
the
the
Primarchs,
Phoenix Lords.
the Phoenix Lords.
The Phoenix
Yeah.
Lords were amazing.
When you took those, if
but
you
this is
filled
it,
your
Those
army with
minis
those,
were storming.
Jez Goodwin.
Yeah.
Stunning Jez Goodwin models. Yeah,
So
you can't knock him.
I remember because I played at school in second edition. Then I dropped out when I went to uni, and then when I started work, I found out one of the guys there played here in Elder Army, and it was my Catachans, and he clearly was a bit beardy and knew his rules, because when he saw I'd armed most of my Catachans with flamers, and I had heavy flamers in there because I just loved the models. He was like, "Well, you really want to be going with different support weapons? They're not that much use." And then obviously a lot of his Aspect Warriors found out how much use they were when you're not having to roll to hit with your not great ballistic skill Catachans. But it was he did talk about it. I think it went out in subsequent editions where he used the beardy tactic of having, was it grav tanks with a particular upgrade where they could literally move, so they could pop up from behind cover, shoot, and then just drop back down.
I remember that.
That was a standard rule for skimmers.
Yeah.
So the thing is, the thing with that game mechanic, it was a brilliant time for gaming. Eldar armies. I was scared to death of warp spiders. I'd play against them with my space wolves, and I was like, "That is the unit I need to kill first. As long as I can kill them, I'll work on everything else. But that's the unit I have to kill." It's the only unit that terrified me, because I had Space Marines at the time. Well, I had a variety of armies, but the thing with the rule system, and I used to do it when I was running games for people in the shop. The rules wasn't that forgiving as well. It had a lot of flaws with it. I said if I've got a 6-man squad of Gene Stealers, it's like a guy said, "Oh, you can't beat Space Marine Devastators." I said, "Well, take a 10-man squad, just bring it along to the shop, and I'll take a squad of 6 Gene Stealers, and I'll kill you, and I won't take a wound." But, "Oh no, you can't." I just went into hiding, and he went into Overwatch. I just kept moving in hiding, and he got like one set of shots at me, which it didn't hit at all because it was so hard to hit in Overwatch. I charged him and took him apart in bits because the rules led themselves to a lot of imbalance, and the horrible rules for shooting at vehicles with the old data faxes was appalling. So glad they overhauled that pretty quickly.
So you think Overwatch has just given me such a flashback to
I was thinking the same story.
Second Age, where so the other army that I had. So once I progressed, because obviously I was playing my guard, and this is the games club as well, and we were playing against orcs and a lot of Eldar. There was lots of Eldar at the time, and my guard were getting hammered all the time, and the Dark Angels had come out. You know, the Codex Angels of Death, where it was.
I've bought it on eBay. I've got it in the other room.
That was the one where it was half of it was Dark Angels, half of it was Blood Angels. And it was like all the angels, Porphyron, and all those lot. All like the breakaway chapters from those two. So I had bought that, and I loved. They did that range of the character models for the Dark Angels, which were amazing. So you had like Azrael, and Ezekiel and
yeah.
Asmodai. And I just loved it was Azrael that had the little dude, his little helmet bearer that followed him around.
The Watcher in
helmet
the Dark.
dude.
Yeah,
Yeah,
helmet
tiny
dude.
Tiny helmet dude.
So I had Dark Angels.
The official title.
And Kel had built a chaos. He'd got his chaos army, but this time he'd gone all Black Legion with it, including like the cool big chaos dreadnought they did, the full metal chaos dreadnought.
Yeah.
And me and Kel, we used to go to the games club, set up these massive games, and 3 turns in, the game would devolve to the point where he would be set up somewhere with Abaddon and 4 Chaos Terminators, all with Reaper autocannons. And then I would have whatever I had left of Dark Angels hidden in cover. He would say Overwatch, and I would say done. And neither one of us wanted to move from cover because we had the point where if he moved from cover, I think I had like Raven Wing or something like that. So if he moved from cover, my Raven Wing would pop out and had the range to get the ground and charge him. And I didn't want to move out because I didn't have the range to charge him where he was, and I would have to leave myself open to these 4 autocannons plus Abaddon. And we had this night where, say, we played 3 turns, got this stalemate, and we wandered off and started watching other people's games, and we're just shouting across this library at school, Overwatch, done! And it still now becomes a thing that if me and Kel are playing a game, at one point one of us will mention Overwatch, and the other will go, done! But yeah, so that was the other big
Second
army
Ed's where Second Ed's where I started my not exclusive love affair with Blood Angels. I don't know what it is about them. That's where I started. I started collecting the little red buggers.
I can tell you, page 22 of the Angels of Death Codex is one of the best fluff pieces you'll ever read for Space Marines. Me and the guy I worked with called Andy at the time, who was my staff member in Workshop in Borough, when Angels of Death came out, that is the army book we sold most. When someone said, "What's a Space Marine all about?" and then we would just literally get the Angels of Death Codex and go, "Read that page there," and we just get this kid stood with his dad, and like they'd read that page, and there's a squad of Mordians, there's a rebel guardsmen in a bunker, and they've holed out, and the Mordians can't clear them out, so they call for support. There you go.
I know. Yeah. Go on. Yeah, go on. Finish the story.
And so there's a Blood Angel sergeant.
And they're talking. Those Mordians are talking amongst themselves about, "Oh, we're doomed. Oh, we're never going to get out of this." And then what's the line?
What it is the Space Marines go in, and they jump back in because they're assault Marines, and the Mordians are like, they just hear everything go quiet, and then just all hell breaks loose. Then they charge in, and when they get to the broken in part of the bunker, all you can just see is Blood Angels tearing these guys in this fury limb from limb, and they're covered in blood and gore and filth. And then the Mordians are quaking in the boots, and this Mordian sergeant, this Space Marine, it says he looms over the sergeant, blood dripping from his visor, and he's like inches away from the Mordian's face, and the Mordians are like, I'm going to die. And this Blood Angel just screams through his visor, "For the Emperor!" And then they all bugger off. It's just mental. But you're like, it just encapsulated what Space Marines were. We're going to come in, we're going to absolutely annihilate everything, then we're going to get out of there. And the amount of people that got into Blood Angels and Dark Angels in the Middlesbrough area, it must be
It was also... there's something about the Angel chapters that they just look cool as hell. Yeah. Dark Angels, I still think Dark Angels is one of the prettiest armies on a table.
Well, especially because you had...
And when I worked for Workshop, that was the shop army. That was the first army I ever painted.
Well, you had
was Dark Angels.
Your standard Dark Angels. Then you had obviously the Death Wing in as we said, the Bone White, and then you had the Raven Wing. So they even had the cool mobile support, which was nice.
Yeah.
So like my favourite Space Marine chapter, and I think they look great. I think their fluff and the story and all the stuff is great, but I just can't get behind them because they wear bright yellow armour.
The fists.
Yeah,
fists.
Yeah.
I think they look lovely on a table. A good painted fist, Imperial fist army.
The problem they were hard armies to get. Even Blood Angels, they were very hard armies to paint well at the time. The thing for me,
it's the type of paints and the painting technology that was available. Yeah,
absolutely. It made them quite awkward to paint and very unforgiving. I mean, for me, if you check out, if you've got, Sven will probably be able to find it, White Dwarf 162 has got my second Ed Dark Angel army in there.
I'm see if I can
If you
find
get
it
that
now.
on, if you can get that on the screen, it'll be quite a treat for you. But I got that in White Dwarf, which I was mightily chuffed.
Don't you be bashful there, Gary. Come on.
Oh, it's a treat for all of us, isn't it?
But a thing from the end of that came through was I'd converted just a plastic Terminator Sergeant, and I'd converted him into a Blood Angel captain. And I used him as Belial, the captain of the third company, because there wasn't a model for him. And he was mentioned in the Storm of Vengeance camp. Do you remember the campaign packs they did for Second Ed?
Yeah, remember those as well.
Storm of Vengeance, the Grudge You Drunk for Warhammer, that kind of thing. And so that done him, and I did it. That got into White Dwarf. Belial became a character in further books. This guy right here. You're welcome, folks. So it's one of those where it's kind of like...
Cheers, Gary.
Hey,
These little
hobby
anecdotes.
Oh, my life is complete.
But for Second Ed, now, I'm going to lay at the point that this fluff we just talked about. I think the codices made Second Ed.
Yeah. But and that's a lovely lead-in, and this is kind of carried on through a lot of the editions where the power slip throughout the codices, where the last army release would always be a lot tougher. Like it would have the beardy rules, it'd have the new things that really made it stand out, but you would have the least amount of time to take advantage of them before the next edition came out.
I think third Ed 40k suffered from that, whereas the iteration of Warhammer at the time was power creeping.
Yeah,
that's when it was creeping then. I think the 40k one came in third Ed and beyond.
So that's going to take us nicely into
the
third
dark
Ed.
years.
So shall we go on to third Ed then?
Okay, so we're going to talk about third Ed, but Ian has had to disappear for a moment or two. So, but it's fine. He's already told us he didn't play third Ed. But this was one that I played quite a bit. Just because of the fact is that it was when a certain Gary decided to hire me to work in the Newcastle store. And at the time I was only playing Warhammer Fantasy Battle. That's all me and my mates played, and we'd got rid of 40k a long while ago. I think I still had some Dark Angels kicking around. I probably still had my Dark Angels army. But my Valhallans...
You were always very worried about your lack of 40k knowledge, like.
Well, it was the fact, like they said, I came in for the interview.
He still is.
Did the interview, got the job, bought a copy of 40k, took the book home, read it like cover to cover. The next day, before going back to town to start my first, my induction and first shift, just so I get a grip on it, and then I think it was one of those things I even said to my mate, in the way that I often say this kind of thing to my mates. Don't worry, you guys probably won't have to get into this. I'll buy the armies and play it, and if anyone wants to use my stuff, I'll use my stuff. And then probably a month later, everyone was back to where they were with like 3,000 point armies. So I think Kel had managed to dust off a lot of his Chaos stuff and repurpose it. But he also started a Dark Eldar army, because they were the new edition for third Ed, weren't they?
At that time, I think that just that transitioned a lot more into really good multi-part plastics. You know, the just good win.
So
Marines.
Was third Ed the first? Yeah, third Ed was the first shoulder pad edition, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I've just put the box up on the screen there. So it was the one with the Black Templars, like the pyramid of Black Templars on the front of the box.
Yeah, and the Dark Eldar with the bad guys. It wasn't a great box content. It had those crappy jungle trees in it. It had 2 corner ruins. It had
bendy range rulers.
Bendy range rulers. 20 short ones as well. 20 Dark Eldar warriors.
Yeah, what was going on with those range rulers? They weren't big enough to use.
Just because they would fit in the box.
But they wouldn't even fit in the box. So that was the thing. Games Workshop.
You had to put them diagonally, didn't you?
Games Workshop have always had this weird thing where the corner to corner of the box is always about 2 inches shorter than the length of the range rulers to put in. And so by the time you've had your box, it's been sitting on a shelf or in a warehouse for a while, you ended up with curved range rulers in every edition of every single game. That and I think it was just so they sold, because it was around the time that Workshop started selling their own dice and their own tape measures and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it came off with those range rulers came out for Necromunda. That's where they came about. They came out for that.
What, they had an excess? They just thought sod it, we'll just chuck them in.
Well, no. It was just kind of like to give it.
Because they were no use to man nor beast, were they?
If you were a kid opening up a box and you were like, "But I don't have a tape measure, Dad," you had a tape measure in the box. That was the thinking, you know.
Yeah, absolutely understand it.
Well, it was a tape measure. It was a line of sight indicator. It did a lot. You know, you could use it to mark your deployment zones.
It wouldn't even do the range of a bolter, though.
Yeah,
it was more for Necromunda players, so you could kind of like get the angles in amongst the 3D use. That was all. But the box contents had, what was it? Plastic land speed and 10 Marines, 20 Dark Eldar, 2 corner ruins, and some plastic trees. And when you looked at 40 Gretchen, 20 Orcs, 20 Marines, and it was 2 proper squads, it looked a bit lightweight.
The book was chunky.
Yeah.
The rule book was chunky. So you got the softback book in the box, didn't you? You could buy the hardback book.
Yeah.
Separately.
That's right.
Because they sold the rule book separately for third ed.
Yeah. The rules weren't a huge departure from second ed. You know, it was decent enough. It's once again, this is where it comes down to codices again. So Andy Chambers I think he was the 40k game lead at the time. And the change in workshop at that time, the foundation of that was the birth of the internet. The internet was coming about. You know, the internet started to change things and transform things. Workshop were getting leaks through on the internet through Portal was a website. Portal.
I remember Portal.
It was Portent, and there was another one I can't remember. So a couple of those, they'd be places people would go to who were internet savvy or could afford it. And Andy Chambers wanted all of the fluff, i.e. the art, the background, the beautifully painted models, online and available on the workshop website. And you were paying a small amount, but you just pay for rules. And do you know what? It just didn't work. You know, it was like, well, where's all my background? Oh, well, that's not there. And they never ever did put it online because no one had that level of internet access like we did today. And for me, Andy Chambers was way ahead of his time on conceptually he wanted to do. I think he misjudged it a little bit, and I think 40k suffered a little bit from that. Really
well, it was about another 10 years before Workshop got around to having like a computer in the store, not just for like mail order to use, but probably for like the staff to use to actually do stuff. And me and you were making. I remember I had a colour printer at home and a PC, and I had a copy of Paint Shop Pro, and I was making posters for the shop with clip art that I'd scanned in. So using a good old hand scanner, scanned in images to use as like borders for the things, because otherwise we had bits of A4 with whiteboard pen or permanent marker just written on each day of the week what the event was, and then we started printing them off and doing. It was like 10 years before Workshop caught up and actually started using computers themselves and really using their web presence.
When Games Workshop left me in 2006, they were still cashing up on pen and paper, and I believe they're still doing that for a further 2 or 3 years after I left. You're talking like we're entering the e-commerce age of shopping online, and Games Workshop was still cashing up on pen and paper. Mental.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's got nothing to do with 40k.
But yeah, I mean, third ed for me, it was like, I'd come from Fantasy Battle, and I felt from second ed to third ed the rules had been simplified a bit. So I think some of the modifiers had been removed. It was a lot easier. It was a lot quicker to play in terms of, calculating what you need to hit and your to wound rolls. It was a lot simpler. I think they'd actually stripped down. Again, I probably need to go back and check this properly, and there'll be someone who will correct me in the comments. I'm sure it was a lot like the whole shooting phase or the assault phase or whatever was a lot quicker to run through because there wasn't as much dice rolling. There wasn't as many, and just like a Wild Ian appears. There wasn't as many things that you had to run through in terms of, dice rolls and calculations and stuff like that. And I think that was a lot more accessible. And
a lot of fans didn't call it that though. At the time, they called it the dumbing down the rules or kidifying the rules.
I think it didn't help that at the time, and we've talked about this before, that the strategy in the shops was sell a game to anybody. And so actually, when you came to the shop on a Saturday or a Sunday, there would be a lot of people who were younger than the old 40k players. Like say we had quite a lot in the shop. I mean, and I'm still friends with quite a few of them now. Guys who are like 10 and 11 coming at the shop, and and there was the mix of the 10, 11-year-olds who really got the rules, and there was the mix of them who got it because they liked the artwork and, you know, the figures and stuff like that. But it meant the rules were a bit more accessible to other people. Was just noticed the cat again. And I think that helped with the popularity of 40k around that point. Plus, I mean, the models at the time that they were bringing out, the release cycle then was phenomenal.
It was plastics. The plastics explosion at the time was the big thing. Everything was moving to plastic with you know, bigger plastic ranges for everything.
So 99 games.
Was this
day,
about when Finecast was coming around?
No,
that was later.
Before that.
So
way before Finecast.
99 Games Day 99. I had just started at the shop like the week before Games Day, so I was in the shop on Games Day, and it was about 2 weeks after Games Day maybe that we had a transfer to the Newcastle store from White Rose, and by doing that, Gary will know who it was. Who was our mate Owen, who went on to do big things at White Dwarf.
He's still big in workshop now.
Yeah.
Senior licensing manager. Really lovely fella.
And he came to join the Newcastle store because he was transferring for university. And he rocked in. And I think at Games Day he'd managed to get a hold of one of the plastic Catachan frames. And they got released just before the Christmas of 99. And I remember seeing those plastic Catachan frames and being absolutely blown away by the quality of those plastics. And I think it was around at that time that I just basically went and I splurged every penny I had, every bit of staff discount that I could muster, and I built a silly big Catachan army. Absolutely ridiculous, like levels of stuff I was buying to build that army up and make it big.
Yeah. I think the further plastic revolutions what we'll be talking about in the upcoming editions as well, because I think rules wise, like we say, they streamlined it down. They took away the huge amount of complexity in close combat. It's like, I'll hit you with a power axe, which is strength 6 with a -3 modifier, but I get -2 initiative. You're using a power fist, which is initiative 1, strength 10. No, and you were like, oh, good.
Well,
Lord,
it was
your head was spinning.
That was the first edition where there was like the saves weren't modified, wasn't it? It was just you got a save or you didn't. It wasn't like, you know, it's a 5+ save -2 or whatever.
You didn't get bogged down. It's like
yeah.
you didn't get 2 units which just sat there battering each other. There was movement. Then you got pushbacks, very reminiscent to Warhammer.
And you had all the stuff like sweeping advances and stuff. You know, the follow-up phase, which again I loved all the dynamics that they put in. And again, so that was where like my gaming group at home jumped on 40k, and we all had 2 or 3 armies. I think we all had at least 2 or 3 armies, because say Kel, he had his old Eldar, he had his Dark Eldar, he had his Chaos. I'm trying to think. My brother had some of the Imperial Guard, and then he got, when they released the Space Wolves, because they released that amazing Logan Grimnar model. Yeah. Was it Logan Grimnar, the one where he's like running with his axe out to his side?
I've got him somewhere in the house.
That around that time, so my brother got the Space Wolves, and as I say, the models that they did, so they were pushing the quality of the models were. I mean, Workshop have always been a step ahead of every other model producer in the market, but when they came out there, the stuff they were producing, I mean, one of the biggest releases we did when I was in the shop at that time around 3rd Ed was when the new Land Raider kit was released. And we had an allocation of like 50, I think, in the store. It was either 30 or 50 that we had, and it was like pain of death. We can't pre-sell them, we can't pre-order them. It's basically, you can't sell them until the release day of the Saturday morning. And there was such a hype about that Land Raider kit because of the options that you had in the kit and the detail in the kit. That
interior detail.
We had a queue of people down Clayton Street in Newcastle. Waiting for that door to open at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and we sold out of Land Raiders in basically the amount of time it took to get 50 people through a till. It was that quick.
So were those the Land Raiders that were actually, they were believable that you could pack a squad of Terminators?
Yeah,
it was a proper brick.
And they had like you know, you could open the doors, and the doors were actually built so when you drop the bottom ramp, the top hatch opened up as well. They were like articulated, and you had the
The term is-
articulated sponsons.
They could never have got out of the front ramp because just physics doesn't work that way. But it still was much more believable than the original ones. I think for me, and this is the thing where the difference comes in, is like those kits started really transforming, really changing what people wanted from Workshop, and being on the inside, what was quite interesting was Workshop held on to the old Rhino for way too long. And I'll tell you an interesting story. It's one of the things I'll credit Jez Goodwin with, lovely fella. Me and Huss, from my other gaming friends who used to work at Workshop, we stood and we chatted to Jez, and managers used to get a bit of a, these are the releases that are coming up. And we were talking about a Rhino to Jez. We're like, God, it needs update. He says, they don't want to do it. It makes too much money. You know, because every Rhino they sold was just pure profit. They'd had the molds forever. They'd sold thousands of the bloody thing. Every £10 Rhino or £15 Rhino they sold was money. That was it. So what Jez did was, he said, let's move away from these metal and plastic hybrid vehicles. They don't work. They don't fit together very well. They don't fit in cases. They're not great. We should go for all plastics. And they were kind of like, no, we don't want to move away from the Rhino. He said, well, I'll tell you what if I designed a plastic whirlwind add-on for the Rhino? He went, oh, that's brilliant. What Jez did, he designed it to fit onto the new Rhino that he'd designed and hadn't told them about. And they said, oh, Jez, but it doesn't fit. He said, it does fit on this though. And they were just blown away by the quality, because the reason you saw better models was Jez had worked with Triple K, the injection company that Workshop bought and vertically integrated into its organisation. And he'd said, oh, we do a lot of flat details, and obviously it'd be much more expensive and time consuming to put like relief detail and rivets and stuff like that on the steel dies that you cast. And the guys at Triple K went, no, it won't. Tell us what you want. And he said, oh, I want to do this. And they were like, yeah, we can do that. It's not a problem. It doesn't increase costs in any shape, way, or form. And that's because of Jez Goodwin working with the people who engineered and moulded the plastics. And he's helped that revolution in Workshop kits dramatically. And I think Workshop owes, much as they've paid him a lot of money, they do owe him a great debt of what he's contributed to their hobby, especially 40k over the years. But he revolutionised a lot of things. Absolutely brilliant, genius fella. Absolutely lovely as well. Really great to speak to. But then you segue this from 40k where it is. Around this time, Epic 40k gets re-released. So they're trying to re-release Epic. Workshop always wanted more than one core game. They wanted multiple systems to build longevity. And they never wanted to get rid of Epic. They always wanted a Warhammer 40,000, Warhammer Epic. They wanted more games. They wanted like 4 or 5 where they had like this really stable amount of games everyone wanted to buy. And I think the next iteration of 40k is absolutely was going to get destroyed because Andy Chambers was leading on it, but he used the Epic 40,000 rules as what we got told was the suppression rules and the things that were in the Epic 40,000 game. He started to bleed into the fourth ed of 40k, and apparently Pete Haynes got a rush job to lead into the next 40k. There was a big panic on about the fourth ed release, and Pete Haynes got given it. And I think Pete Haynes probably did one of the most subtle and lovely set of rules for 40k I'd played. It was so much better than anything they'd done. It was simple. It piggybacked on. It kept the simplicity of third ed, but brought the army design and the maneuver and counter maneuver that you didn't really get in either of the previous 2 editions. I think fourth ed was brilliant. The Battle for McCrag set was brilliant.
So, question, just because I'm this is where I'm fuzzy in whether it was 3rd, 4th, or 5th. Probably 3rd or 4th they started doing this. When was it that Workshop started doing the big supplements to 40k? So, you know, they did the Armageddon book, which added loads of new stuff in, like the Steel Legion and stuff, and then they did Cities of Death.
Third
and
ed.
was that third? And it was that when they did
ed.
Apocalypse as well, the first iteration of Apocalypse.
Apocalypse came out in fourth ed.
That was 4th ed, because I know that they'd done Cities of Death, because I definitely had Cities of Death.
Yeah.
And they had because I think, was that when the big terrain, the Cities of Death box came out, that you got all the scenery, the big city fight box, or was that later?
It was a bundled package. Of when they started doing new terrain.
Yeah, because that was when they started branching off, and like it wasn't just new rules in the codex. They started bringing out the books where it was like here's a new
Yeah,
like
added
Death
to the
World type stuff.
gameplay.
Yeah,
Yeah. It could change the way you played and made the worlds you were fighting on more diverse, but it always seemed to stagnate into city fighting and jungle fighting.
So
Because
I was just doing some checking there because I remember Apocalypse, and I'm sure I didn't play third. It was fourth ed.
Fourth ed was Apocalypse. Yeah,
2007 was Apocalypse.
that's what I said. Fourth ed.
I thought you
Absolutely.
said third ed.
No.
no, third ed was
Fourth ed.
City Fight and Armageddon.
But
they've
sorry,
done-
I wrapped them all up together.
They've done Armageddon a couple of times, I think, but yeah, it was like City Fight. That's the thing. I just remember, like, I don't know if they're still kicking around at my brothers, or if they were one of the things that got ruined by a flood in the games shed. But we used to have all the old books for like City Fight and Apocalypse and Armageddon and everything there.
So Cities of Death and Jungle Fighting came at the tail end as Fourth Ed came into being.
Yeah.
And Fourth Ed was a really nice little box set. It was a slim box set. I don't know if you remember it. It had the crashed Aquila lander. You got 20 Marines, the multi-pack Marines, but they were nice, like plug fit Marines, and they were actually quite nice models. You got
Yeah, I remember those. They were like the first, weren't they? Like the first non-glue plug fits.
Yeah, you could get away without gluing them, but just a dab of glue.
Yeah.
2 dabs of glue, grab on the bolt, dab on the base, done. That's it.
Yeah.
And you got spore mines and hormagaunts for the Tyranids.
Yeah.
You might have got something else in there.
That was Battle from a Crag, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was Battle from a Crag. Yeah.
And that was the Fourth Ed.
Looking now, you got a few Gene Stealers, some Termagants, a nest. It was a cracking little box looking at it.
Yeah. It was good. It was a good little set. It was the rules for it were really nice. Pete Haynes he piggybacked and did a naturally organic, like a fit on from the previous two games. He took the good stuff from second edition that he could, and planted it into the third edition, and took away some of the rubbish that was in third edition. And it's just such a lovely rule set, really nice.
So yeah, I mean, fourth edition was one where I definitely bought the rule book and we played it a lot. But I think essentially, because we went into fourth edition straight off the back of third, we all kept the existing armies we had and just bought the new stuff the new releases that came out. So I think around that time is probably where I'm trying to, again, this is the messed up timeline of everything now. Is I can't remember where that was, where they brought out stuff like the drop ships for the Imperial Guard. So
the drop ship for Space Marines, the drop pods for Space Marines that came out.
In fact,
for Fourth Ed,
that's when I started my Cadian army. So because I started my Cadian and I bought 3 of the Valkyries.
Yeah.
Or Vultures.
But you got them from Forge World because we're still at the time.
Well, I got a Forge World one, which is still in my cabinet, and I had 2 of the plastic dropship ones.
Yeah.
For my Cadians.
So for Fourth Ed, I think this is where you started seeing. You went back. It was revisiting the second ed codexes that made them so successful. It was you started getting background alongside the rules, and it went back to what people wanted. They wanted to buy a book and go. You were immersed in the world of that army, and they just leapt off the page at you, and you're enriched by it. And then you're like, and then you'd look at it was just they really got it right. They just went back to second ed with the Fourth Ed codexes, and that for me was brilliant.
So I think through fourth ed is when I collected. Me and Lee bought a Tyranid army. I bought a lot of it. I think Lee bought a few bits for the Tyranid army, and we built because they brought the Grey Knights.
Yeah.
Which were the big chunky Grey Knights that were on like bigger bases. And I had a Grey Knight army, and because they brought all the Inquisition stuff, which was kind of off the back of all the Dan Abnett stuff that they're doing with Inquisitor, was all the Grey Knight stuff was back in the consciousness again.
Back when Slanesh Demonettes had boobies and stuff.
Yep.
And there were the Juan Diaz ones, which were stunning figures, absolutely stunning.
And so we had Necron. I bought a box of Necrons, like the battle box. So this is when Workshop was all about doing the battle boxes, one at the Battle Force, £40, and you got like. Normally it would be a land speeder, a bunch of troops, and some terrain, and that was your battle force. And so I bought a Necron battle force, painted up, never did anything with it. and again, fourth ed, we played a lot, and I think the death knell for fourth ed was Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Apocalypse
totally
came
agree.
out. I went silly, and I bought.
You?
Yeah, it's hard to believe. So, I bought the release.
Is this when you bought all the Bane Blades that ever existed?
Yeah, so they released the plastic Baneblade kit where you could make a Baneblade or the Stormhammer, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the one box, and I bought 3 of those. 65 quid a pop, which at the time a Baneblade from Forge World was 125 quid. And I've got one of those Forge World Baneblades in my cabinet, courtesy of Gary there.
So this is when Workshop seemed to be fighting against part of its own organisation, because Forge World, throughout from 3rd edition into 4th edition, just became a beast. You go to Games Day. I don't know if you guys went to any of the Games Days around that time. You go to Games Day, and Games Day just became Forge World Day.
So, Forge World around that time releasing probably the best Imperial Guard miniatures. I think the company have ever done.
They were releasing the best of anything.
They were releasing the things that people wanted for that edition of 40k that they weren't getting.
Oh, those Elysian.
The Elysian drop troops. Gorgeous.
So
the buggies. The Elysian drop troop buggies.
Well,
that 6-wheeler,
Derek, who was one of our good friends when we were in the shop, and still is a good friend, but he used to come in all the time. He did a beautiful Elysian drop army where he converted everything. Everything was converted, and not just like Forge World conversion, that you went out the way to basically make everything adapted for it. But I think the thing where Forge World was really good, especially if you were a guard player, was if you were a guard player, you bought the guard codex, and you'd go, okay, Chimera. At the time, it was like Chimera, Hellhound, Lehman Russ. There was like two or three different Lehman Russes you could get, because you got the Russ and the Russ Exterminator.
The Demolisher with the mortar on it.
Yeah, the Demolisher, and there was a handful of tanks you could buy in the shop. But this is even pre the Punisher, because I think that was a later edition, wasn't it, when that came? But it might be. I don't know if that was 4th or 5th edition.
Do you mean the Vanquisher?
No, the Punisher was the one with the Gatling
Punisher
cannons.
as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But even earlier than that, when Forge World really first started, they then had another like 15 tanks in Forge World that were in the book that you could only get the bits through Forge World. So I mean, I remember buying 2 of the Vanquisher turrets, and I bought the little scout car they did, the Chimera scout car. What was it called? I forget what it's called now, but it was like, and it was because it was that clever thing of they were all using the same subframe, either a Chimera hull or a Lehman Russ hull. It meant all of a sudden, if you were a guard player, you were like, okay, do you know what? I'm going up against heavy armor, so I'll take 2 Vanquisher turrets, and I just need to swap them out for me existing turrets. It was great for that. But where it got silly was when they started doing, here's 6 different patterns of Baneblade chassis you can buy for 125 quid a pop.
Or you went the other. I mean, it was 4th edition is where I was just. That's what the debate we were having. It's 4th edition. I came back into it because I'd moved up to Newcastle. I was playing with you and Lee, and I bought the Orc Codex, which was one of the last, if not the last codex released of 4th edition, and it
infuriates me, that codex.
It was the one that was essentially, this is an incredibly tough army. Please go out and buy 200 models.
Yeah.
And you still won't have a 1,000-point army.
And you'll never paint it.
Some of it got painted. The stuff that I bought off eBay that was pre-painted, that was painted. But it was here's your orcs, run them across the board into the guns of whatever army you're facing, and that army has to whittle it down to make it manageable. Like and it was something, I don't know if they just math hammered it. It was something stupid like, if more than 50 of those orcs make contact with the enemy line, you've probably won, just by the sheer number of attacks that they'll dole out in hand-to-hand combat.
That was the edition. That was the edition where it really was, and it kind of is still to this day to a degree. But it was, how many dice can you get on the table at any one point?
Well, they did it with the guard, and
that's what Orc armies are all about, wasn't it?
Yeah, like say the guard had
Yeah.
first rank fire, second rank fire, and all that kind of stuff. Where you could just, I mean, I was rolling like 60 dice at a time sometimes with some of the guard units I had.
Yeah.
So this is where I'll go back to my comment about Epic and why I think the Death Knell of Epic was second edition coming out was what impacted for Apocalypse coming out for fourth ed was the fact that you'd gone beyond the point of like I've got this 2,000 point army for second ed, plays beautifully in the second ed rules, it's fantastic. When you get to fourth ed, there's no big battles game anymore. Epic had died a death. The edition that Andy Chambers had released, it killed Epic. No one enjoyed it. The figures were beautiful because they looked exactly like the 40k ones in Epic scale, stunning figures, and it killed it. So the reaction to that from a gaming point of view is, well, we've got 40k, the models are relatively cheap, why don't we just play huge games of 40k? And then Apocalypse comes along, which I was very excited for. Till
I was as well. I remember it.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly because that was what was going to get me back into 40k was Apocalypse because I wanted that really big. We've played games. Whenever we play Bolt Action or whatever, I'm always let's just have another 500 points.
You're not.
I want that big epic look
Feel.
of a game, and Apocalypse was going to be that for me. Failed.
I had the same problem with Apocalypse that I have with, and I love the bolt action games we've played. That it's you hit a certain point where you spend, particularly the kind of gaming we do, which is we'll play it over today, and we'll get started around lunchtime, and we'll try and finish around dinner time. And it's a case of you spend longer setting up the table to then look at it and go, that's amazing. Right, let's have a turn. Just the one. It's only the one turn that we'll probably have time for, maybe 1.5. And it just I hadn't realised until doing it with Apocalypse and later with I prefer the smaller. It doesn't look as grandiose on the table, but it plays better. The 1,500, 2,000 point game.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I loved Apocalypse because as a guard player, again a guard player with an extreme plastic addiction. Like Apocalypse came out and everyone was going, "Oh, brilliant! I can finally buy a Lehman Russ company," and I went, "Oh, brilliant! I can finally field one of my Lehman Russ companies."
But what happened to us, and so at the time I was then running your Castle store, which was a battle bunker, and we set up. I think we had 3 staff on each side playing, and we set up a game, and we put it down. And I'd started to have reservations about Apocalypse, about what we wanted from it as a business, to why the hobby had changed dramatically. It was very monetized, very corporate at that point. And I was like, what's going on here? And Apocalypse was the thing that did it for me, where we played a game, I forget what size table it was, it might have been an 8x4, which was bigger than you'd normally play on. I think we played an 8x4 upstairs in the battle bunker after hours one evening, and we got out the figures, and literally there was, from corner to corner, diagonally, there was a 12-inch gap, and everything else was models and vehicles as far as the eye could see. There was no space to move anything, and it was like dropping big templates of orbital barrages and stuff like that. And we were like, and we played it, and we were like, we're loving the scale of it, we're loving the look of it, but this is unplayable. The point of 40k is it's a skirmish game ultimately, and skirmish games require you to move, maneuver, use cover, use terrain, go for objectives. And Apocalypse was just, I've got my figure collection out, and it was like playing Toy Soldiers as I was a kid.
Apocalypse is when you were starting to see that real upsurge in Titans as well.
Yeah.
In 40k scale Titans, wasn't it? You'd suddenly see a Reaver or a Warhound on the table, and then there'd be 2 of them, and then there'd be 3 of them. Yeah. And you've got this Warhound Titan with a Lehman Bus company on its base.
Yeah.
So
and things like this, and it just ridiculous.
There were,
massive and good, but ridiculous.
For me, it was, and it's some of those things that just stick with you and they're visceral. Okay, I get that you've not cheated doing this. I get that it's absolutely within the rules. It's everything else, and I get it's what is a viable tactic. But on a real personal, it's not fun. When it happened, it was like, oh, that's not fun. As in, there was nothing fun about that. And it was game ruining, which is like, and you probably remember, I'm sure it was a game we were playing, Sven, because you set up this great table, you've got this great big army, it's all great. So right, first turn, what are you doing? okay, I am drop podding in one of my Marines who's going to step out and just hoy a vortex grenade
it was-
into
that
your
was the-
massively packed units.
The 12-foot table we had, where the only way to get across my front room was crawling under the table.
Yep.
And
And it was just, that's literally your whatever 100 points worth of vortex grenade drop pod, and like it was literally the lowest amount of Marines you could get coming out just to chuck that grenade.
yeah, and that
just
was a bit. That was one or two Bane blades gone if a vortex travelled or whatever. But I mean, it was. I have to say the scale was impressive, and you got to do cool stuff like, our mate Kel, round then decided he was building up a Marine chapter, and he literally went out and bought everything in one haul, everything he needed to build that Marine chapter. He was building the Emperor's sides, or sides of the Emperor.
That's it, sides of the Emperor.
And he built this whole thing, and he went, do you know what would be really impressive as a figurehead for that? Thunderhawk. And they had just, Forge World had just released that, like, 275 or 300 odd quid.
Yeah, right.
Which isn't as impressive as the original limited edition 400 quid when they came in like an oak.
The metal one.
And the oak and
That
red
metal one was
velvet
amazing.
lined
Weighed
box.
6.2 pounds or something.
But I tell you what, Kel still got that Thunderhawk at his house now, and it is huge. And it's so big, it just becomes an objective to fight around, because you can't use it in a game. And it was the same with the Titans. The Titans, you couldn't really use them in the game. And then you got like Forge World, I think, got giddy with its own success, and we've talked this before. Tapping into the market of people who'd been in the hobby for 15 years and are now, like CEOs, and where their mates spend £2,000 a month
Hollywood actors
on cocaine, they spend it on hobby stuff, and like you get like Forge World would just go, this month's release is the Tau Manta, so it's 900 quid. And I think that's later.
What a model, though.
Was the Tau the next edition? I can't remember.
No, the Tau were fourth ed.
Fourth ed. Yeah, so like they brought the Tau Manta. I mean, we know a guy that bought all of those big Forge World things, and he bought he bought the Tau Manta, and he's got like silly big armies and things, and it's just like
customer number one for the Manta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because 900 quid.
And do you know what? I went around his house. It was a horrible fit. He was having to green stuff it to death to make it look like a good model. I was kind of like, for 900 quid, that should be perfect.
For 900 quid, I want someone from Forge World to come round to my house and assemble it for us while cooking me tea.
Honestly, it wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's 900 quid or 25 quid. It should still go together well, and it should still be a good model. That's, and this is something I think that we'll probably catch up on at some point, is for all of the good and the developments that Workshop have done in materials and sculpting and modelling and all that kind of stuff, up until quite recently, their quality of production was really variable at times. You get these sprues of minis that were horribly disjointed, with that slight where the mould has slipped and you've got those really big kind of edges on everything.
So I think that takes us kind of into 5th ed, really, because that's kind of where, for me, production started slipping, because we said before about Finecast, and I think that's where Finecast came out, was around 5th ed. I think, because this is where I dropped out of 40k. I bought the... Yeah. What was the battle for... The box they did where you got like some... What did you get? Black Templars and... what was the box that you got for that one? Or Dark Angels or something? There was...
3rd ed.
No, the 5th ed box.
Black Templars and...
Was it Chaos?
Assault on Black Reach?
Assault on Black Reach.
Was that not 6th ed?
Was that 6th ed? Oh, okay, and in that case I might have just bought the book for 5th ed. So I think we got 5th ed and didn't play it much, and I started building up my... So what year was 5th ed?
5th ed was 2008. So at this point, I'd been left Workshop a couple of years when this came out. Had still had armies, wasn't playing as often as I used to. Was on a definite hiatus. Loads of personal things going on as well. So loads of change going on in my life. And the thing for me, one of the big changes for me was I went to the Games Workshop shop as a customer and played against one of the guys I currently work with now, actually, a guy called Dave. and I played my Iron Warriors army, which I had, and I distinctly remember this. I had 10 Iron Warriors veterans, led by my Iron Warrior Warsmith, right, my top guy, and 5 Dark Angel Assault Marines assaulted me, and absolutely annihilated me because of the way the rule system worked at the time. I can't even remember what it was. There was something that changed with close combat. Oh, that was it. It was where they brought in you roll 2d6 to make you charge, and I'd failed, and so he then charged me, and just the virtue of the fact he charged me meant he could wipe me the hell out, and I was deeply unimpressed with the way that they changed the flow of the game, and certain things have been overwhelmingly, they would have a dramatic impact. And I only played a couple of games of it, and I was like, nah, it's not for me. And I don't remember a lot about a box set at the time. I feel like they were going towards a book. I can't even remember what was in a 5th edition box.
Yeah, so I definitely remember having the book, and if it was 2008, we were definitely playing 5th Ed, because that was when Ian moved up that was around when you moved up to Newcastle. Really was like 5th Ed when we were playing that. Unless we were still playing 4th and we'd avoided 5th. I can't remember.
So it was Assault and Black Reach was. I'm just looking at it just now. Sorry, I was having a chat. Assault and Black Reach was 5th.
Yeah. So that was
Assault and Black Reach. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I bought that box and I didn't do anything with it. I think I've still got the little like thin, getting started guide kind of book. And I think I flogged half of the box because I wanted the Marines.
It's the one with the orc.
It was a good starter set actually.
Yeah, looking at it,
There was a lot in there.
It's a Space Marine battle force facing off against a hell of a lot more orcs.
If anything, I probably would have sold the orcs to you, Ian.
It's because you were still using the 4th Ed Orc Code. There wasn't a 5th Ed Orc Codex.
That's what it was.
So all those orcs were from the big Flood Orc Codex.
Orc Codex pissed me off, and I'll tell you why. They brought out the Orc Codex for 2nd Ed with Gazgul Ed, and it was magnificent, wonderful, brilliant book. It was 10 years before the Space Orc book got an update. 10 years. It was unbelievable. They'd brought out 4 dwarf books in the same period of time that 2 Space Orc editions came out. That for me was there was something going on with workshop design in the background where there was like, how can you not cater to your whole hobbyist range? It was crazy. Everyone was having to play with PDFs in errata. Didn't make any sense.
So we must have been playing a bit of 5th Ed because that was around the time where, as I say, you moved up and you were collecting your orcs, and
so I think we got the 5th Ed game. We played a couple of games of it and went, this isn't as good as 4th Ed, and went back to using the 4th Ed rules.
Because I say 2009 to 2009 was when I started building my Mentor Legion, which I've played one game after building and painting. I spent 60 hours, and I know how much time I logged on it because it was pretty much... In fact, I spent The Wire... Not even a length of time. The Wire, the box set of The Wire, painting one squad of Mentor Legion. One depressing Christmas and New Year, where I came in, I got in from work every day, put on the Wire DVDs, watched those and painted, and that's all I did for a whole week with no interaction with anyone other than the 3 people I saw at work. And I think I played one game with my mentors, and that might not even have been 5th Ed. That might have been later on. Probably when 6th Ed came out, I played one game and went, do you know what? Not for me anymore.
So, and I alluded to this earlier on. I'm mindful. Given how long we've been talking, do we want to try and wrap up and maybe cover the last few editions in another episode?
Well, I mean,
I think that's fair.
I'm not going to be talking about anything now after this because I say this is where I dropped out of it.
I haven't played anything after what we're talking about here, so we could actually quite quickly drop out.
The only person that's played recently has been Ben. So which was the last edition you played? Because I can't even know what the changes were for 5th and 6th.
7th was the last I played. I remember buying like 8th edition box sets and rule books, and then I bought the box set again, and every time I bought it, I started it and then just sold it.
That was Shadowspear, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because we unboxed it on
the Primaris. It was the Primaris release. when they brought them big boys out,
So that would have been
and
2-3
Robert
years ago.
Gurleyman and all the the Primarchs and things like this. Yeah, 8th edition always to me looked lovely, and from what I understand from the people I know that have played it, it's just one of those games I've just never got round to playing. There's always been something else to do.
So
I've
here's
got
one. So hang on.
massive amounts of army upstairs. Yeah.
Your Blood Angels, isn't it? You got an enormous Blood
We'll
Angels.
have to do
Angels, my new Blood Angel army.
We'll have to do like a kind of a showcase of your Blood Angel army at some point. It's something I've been meaning to do on the
'Cause they're
channel for
lovely.
ages. On a tangent here, like something to do on the thingy for ages. Is to basically, those of
Do
us
an
that
army
have still
tour.
got like armies, like get our armies out and show them off. Like even if it's not 40k bolt
Yeah, yeah.
action, whatever. Even if it's like,
You know,
Give
bolt
me
action
something to
ones.
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a beautifully painted bolt action army.
You do, don't you? You've got a couple,
It's
haven't you?
incredible. Two of them, yeah, two beautifully painted.
Two
bolt
really
action
good, well painted armies there.
So yeah, so getting back to the topic at hand, yeah. So, see, I remember being conscious about 7th edition coming out, and I don't know if my brother and Kel attempted to play 7th, and then 8th edition came out, and the only contact I had with 8th edition was unboxing the Shadow Spear box with you, Ben.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was at the time when Workshop was really pushing 40k to the general populace in terms of, that was when Conquest came out.
Yeah.
The supplemental magazine where you built your armies,
Yeah.
the Nurgle and the thingy. So obviously I dipped in from there.
And it's where the expansion of the IP started as
Yeah.
well, wasn't it? They started to really
They started
kind of
reining it
look
back
at the
in.
whole hobby and saturate. Cubicle 7 picked up the license for the role play game and
They've
and the
gone
like,
through-
things like that.
They've gone through the Chapter House legal fiasco, which
Yeah.
and trying to sue that woman for using the word Space Marine in the book.
Yeah.
And they were painting themselves into a bit of a bad light, but understandably they've got to protect their IP. I just don't think they did a brilliant win. That's why you started seeing it's like, the Imperial Guard, the Astra Militarum, and the
So they've made their IP
Drakari.
really
protectable.
easy to
Yeah.
defend now.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the right thing to do. And I think it was it's very much the right thing for them. They just did it in a bit of a cack-handed way, but hey ho. For me, it's quite interesting how their IP has changed. You're right; it's dramatically changed. You can see that with 40k and Warhammer. Rules-wise as well, and model-wise, the models have just got better. Things have scaled up. Warhammer saw bigger creatures. You were seeing like those, Arachnaroks, which were 12-inch long bloody giant spiders with forest goblins mounted on platforms and that. You were seeing this huge dramatic scale up of what you could get within the game system. 40k was already a bit ahead of the curve because it had bigger figures in it anyway. I think 40k has gone through a nice genesis, but I think the thing for me,
You look at some of those minis that were released during 8th edition. Like I say, like Mortarion and the Mortarion mini is just outrageous. It's so beautifully detailed.
The one that's got me excited, and it kind of leads me on to a question I was going to ask you, just to kind of try and wrap this all up, which is, what is the mini they've not done yet that you're just waiting for? Because for me, and it's ever since seeing it as Space Marine, an epic miniature, and I can feel they're close to it, is the Demon Primarch Fulgrim. There's been rumours about it. They've talked about it for a while. They've not done much, and they're trying to bring back some of the Slanesh stuff.
Yeah, I think I can see how they've got the skill for doing things like that. I think the other ones, the Pete Foley joke board everyone's seen that was on the recent one community release was what was it?
Plastic Thunderhawk, yeah.
Plastic Thunderhawk, right rules for Angron,
Yeah.
But things like all those epic Primarchs I would love to see, like Angron would be beautiful. I'd love to see Lionel Johnson and Lee done really well.
Yeah.
But they've got to get them right. If you get them wrong, oh God.
You've seen it with the Horus Heresy on some of the Primates. You look at the Sanguinius model that they did, that Forge World did for that, and I mean, I personally like it.
I couldn't stand it.
No, likewise.
But I know lots of people really, really dislike it. So, if the rumours are true and that there's a chance that the blonde vampire comes back, because he's not really dead. Oh no, they've got to do it justice. The same as the lion, all of them. They've got to do them justice.
Yeah.
But Plastic Thunderhawk's the one for me.
Yeah. Stan?
Put a Thunderhawk on the table that's affordable.
I don't know, because the problem is that I've missed out on so much of the last few years of releases and things, and I've not really paid that much attention to a lot of 40k stuff, that everything I can really think of that I would want has been done at some point. Like they've done stuff like Eisenhorn as a 40k model. They've done the Inquisitor scale stuff like Artemis and stuff down as a 40k model. It was part of the Death Watch stuff. I think everything...
There's no Ravenor.
Yeah, they haven't done a Ravener.
Floating box.
Just a box, yeah.
Floating box with a eye on the front of it.
With a little face and an Inquisitor sign on the top.
But no, I mean, so like, I don't know. There's not that much really in the 40k realm that I think I would like to see some of maybe the old stuff for the Guard returning as plastics. Like if they did like a plastic Valhallan box, I'd be all over that. But that was the question I was going to wrap up with, was 9th ed. Like, is it like, what would it take for 9th edition to make you seriously consider going back to playing games of 40k again? And not
Marines with chainswords.
Marines with Primaris with chainswords. Is that what you want?
Primaris with chainswords. That's what sold it. That was all it needed.
They are.
I know they are. That was a joke.
For me, they did it in the last edition for what I wanted, which was Space Marines, which were the right skill for Space Marines. And I think, unfortunately, Primaris they couldn't kill the old Space Marines. It would have been commercial suicide. But for me, I would collect a Primaris army and use them as normal Space Marines because they're the right skill. And I know that sounds awful, but yeah, that's all.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, they look, and they look great. I know quite a lot of 40k players that have got these big Primaris armies. And you put them out, and they look absolutely spot on at that scale.
Yeah, I'm dreading. What's a Primaris bloody Terminator going to look like?
Well, they've done them, haven't they? Those the Devastator Destructors or whatever they're called.
For me. They're very same as the Assault Marines. They're very, very different. I
suppose, yeah.
I'd end up. I was going to collect it. It would be a tactical company, all of just the basic Primaris. But with these new Assault Intercessors come out, I've seen with what looks like the bolt gun the normal Marines have with a huge chainsaw. They look stunning, really nice. Really.
And those new bikes as well. The new Marine bikes look just.
They look lush.
So Ian, what would it take for you? And I know it would be someone to build and paint your army for you. That's a given. But what is it? What is it for 9th ed that would make you come back to playing 40k?
Probably us not doing it.
A not horribly chaos like a Alpha Legion Chaos Army.
Oh,
but not like like they should be. So essentially, a Space Marine with minimal chaos influence army.
So I think, as I say,
I think the Primaris models could really lend themselves to it.
The only thing that would make me want to come back to 40k, and I say it would be, I said it before, I think gut instinct and just going, the first thing that comes to my head, it would be a range of really nice multi-posable Valhallan models with like Valhallan influenced vehicles. So,
add-on packs for the basic kits and stuff like that.
Like, give me like proper snowplows. Give me, give me a Chimera that's more like a snowcat. Or give me.
So if they do with Marines, you can get you can buy a basic box of Marines and then you can get the little sprue of addition bits.
Yeah.
If they did something like that for the different Guard regiments.
The problem is the current Guard models, I think, are fairly weak.
Yeah, they'd have to.
The Cadian standard, yeah.
The one Now, I was building those years ago, and it's still the same models. The casting on them is pretty bad. The mold lines are terrible. They're very static.
Well, the molds are really old.
Well, what was annoying with the plastic guard models that did, so the plastic Catachans and the plastic Cadians, and this always annoyed me, was a plastic Catachan model stops at the belt buckle, so it goes legs, feet at the belt, and the plastic Cadians go belt to neck, so you couldn't easily mix and match heads and legs and bodies. And I wanted
that was probably deliberate,
because I wanted to do for me Cadians. I was going to do a penal legion, penal, and I was going to use the Catachan upper halves on Cadian legs, but you had that weird discrepancy between them. But no, plastic Valhallans, if they were really nice and they were like really well themed and had add-on kits for the vehicles, even maybe like some specialist bits of kit that the Valhallans could have, that would swing me from a modeler to wanting to then buy some stuff and get into playing. But like I've got some of the Astra Militarum guys for Kill Team, and I'm just not into the styling of them. I want something that's like the Valhallans again, that's got that unique Death World quality about them.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what it would take for me, and I want the stars in a jar, and I want the moon on a stick. I want Warhammer 30,000. Yep. I want a full plastic Heresy range. I want plastic jet bikes. I want the old Mark 1 plastic Land Raider. I want the old Rhinos done to modern standards, piggybacking off what they did for Betrayal at Calth, and those beautiful multi-part Mark 4
Mark 4s.
Just stunning, absolutely stunning. And there's a whole wealth of people who love Horus Heresy gaming that I've seen loads of Facebook pages for it, loads of different social media pages for it. I would totally be all over that, and not because it's like I'm harking back to the old times. I think those armies done now, and the impact that they have with the Primarchs they're bringing out, stunning.
So again, it comes back to I think that's why the comment about the Alpha Legion is, and there's a lovely Alpha Legion set of minis in Forge World on their Horus Heresy set.
Yeah.
And it's just seeing.
But
something.
From watching the release for 9th, it's very much forward looking. It's very much about the future and the future story. With this massive book campaign that they're doing, which is going to be on the same scale as the Heresy, just a story that we've never read before. So I think it's going to be really interesting in terms of fluff and product development.
I mean, I think I'm going to look at it a lot more in depth now, just so, because I think I'm now much more focused on a lot more aspects of the hobby and seeing what's coming out. And I think because we do this, it's a lot more of an incentive. I took a bit more of interest in 8th Dead because there was one of the guys I was working with got into 8th Dead, and so he knew I'd been into 40k years ago and started asking me loads of questions, and I got intrigued into what were the differences and stuff then. So I'll probably do the same with 9th. I'll kind of keep on top of it and keep an eye of it, and I know that because I've still got like 2 or 3 armies in a cabinet or in cases that I could probably dust off and try out, but I've always been scared of doing that because all my Marine armies are just plain old Marines, they're not Primaris, and I always thought the way that Workshop will get rid of plain old Marines is in a couple of editions time there'll be no point taking them because everything will have moved on so much in terms of power creep that they'll be...
I think it's something that's rumoured about 9th, is that they reckon by the end of 9th, old Marines will be obsolete because they're recreating all the ranges. The reason that you could get away with playing standard Marines is because you had Assault Marines. There weren't Assault Primaris. There weren't Primaris Bikers. There weren't First Company veterans.
Yeah.
And all of these things are now starting to appear in the Primaris line.
I'm hoping the destruction of Cadia that they did in the background is going to become a metaphor in the way that destroys those models that everyone refers to them as. You've all just said it, the Cadians. That's what those current Imperial Guard figures are. You know what they should bring out? A defining. This is it's a struggle to do because 40k is such a diverse universe. But this is your bog standard Imperial Guardsman, very much in the case of the old Rogue Trooper ones with the long las gun. this is your Billy Bog standard. This is what an Imperial Guard looks like.
Well, that's what the Cadian was supposed to be. Was your bulk standards. You know, the Cadians, like the Ultramarines, were supposed to be the absolute everyman,
The
weren't
template
they, of the
for everyone
of
else
the
to
thing.
cut you off. So I think it's a pretty good place for us to wrap this here, because again we're just getting into old man territory now.
We started in old man territory.
But
We've not really got out of it.
Been very interesting. And do you know what? Even now I'm sitting thinking about it. I'm thinking of armies that I've jumped entire phases of armies that I've had.
The last few days, I've actually been looking at what's available in Primaris to add to my Blood Angels, because I haven't yet. I've not added any, but I'm like, well, what's out there at the moment? Or am I just going to wait for those Assault Marines?
I've been thinking, right, I've got Patrol at Calf. Am I going to get out that and just really go to town on those and paint them, and finally get around to doing something with them?
Well, let's see. I've got some kill team stuff there, and I've got Blackstone Fortress, which I want to get painted up. And I've still got Kill Team Rogue Trader sitting there in his box that's never been opened. That I'm probably going to get around to painting at some point, which might get me back into a bit of 40k vibe.
I think this is stimulating my 30k as well.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I've got a load of the Depths Titanic and stuff there that I need to get into, and that's something for an entire different show. But as I say, we'll wrap it up now. But what we'll do is, I think, so between now and this going out, if you go to the Average Tabletop Gamer support group, I'm going to start a thread post in there, and I'm going to see if I can list out all of the 40k armies I've had by edition. Just as a memory test from me, to see if I'm not going to go into full what I had in every squad and every unit. I mean, just as in what armies I collected. I know
You're going to put a Y as well.
Yeah, probably. And so if you're watching this and you've got this far, and you've also done the similar journey to us, even if it's not from Rogue Trader all the way through, even if you've collected over a few editions or you've collected a number of armies, it would be good to see what everyone else has kind of jumped to. Like, so I'd be interested to see who has stuck with Imperial Guard all the way through, who has jumped to whatever the newest race is. So if you were the kind of person who jumped on Dark Eldar when they came out, who jumped on Tau. So
Tau.
Jump into the Average Tabletop Gamers support group, and we'll get that discussion going. Or you can obviously write it in the comments below if you want to do it on YouTube. And so since we're talking about that, we'll talk about our other social media. So obviously we've got the Average Tabletop Gamers page on Facebook, and the support group that we just mentioned. And we've got Twitter, Average Tabletop, so give us a shout out there. And Average Tabletop on Instagram, where you can see some photographs of stuff that we're building and painting and things like that. And we'll get a bit more stuff thrown out there, because I'm sure we've done a lot of painting in lockdown that we've not shown off yet.
Loads.
Yep. And we'll go from there. So remember to hit the subscribe and notify in YouTube if you haven't done that already, just to keep up to date with content from us here. And again, hopefully soon we will get out of lockdown and we'll be able to get together in the same room and actually have a game of one of these things. It might even be 9th edition, probably 11th edition by the time we get out of lockdown. Ha ha ha. Political humour. So
we can all go to Durham and play there.
Yeah, I'll bring my Plague Marine army.
So from me, Sven, and I'll say ta-ra, and then I'll let you go around, jump in when you want.
I'm going to say goodbye as well. I'm Ian.
I'm Gary, and I'll see you soon.
And I was Ben, and I will be next time.
So thank you again for joining us for episode 6, known here as the trip down 40k memory lane, assault on memory cells. Goodbye, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you next time.
See you now.